Good morning, Tim Sykes here. We have another crazy day with literally a dozen stocks in play. A little bit overwhelming, but some good opportunities, and I want to get to them in a second. First, I have to tell you about this opportunity. This will probably be gone in the next day or two. So it's a very limited short-term window that you have to go to traderandinvestorsummit.com and get your early bird pricing for my upcoming conference. This will be in Orlando in September, and it is 3 days. So you can lock in the early bird pricing, just $297 for the first 200 people who register. I highly, highly, highly encourage you to go. I'd love to meet you guys in person, but also it's not just me. It's also my top students, Tim Grittani, Mark Crook, Michael Good, Superman will be there. Several other millionaire traders will be there. We'll be live trading on Monday, September 12th. But go to traderandinvestorsummit.com. You can see all of the details, and I really can't wait to see you guys. Also, I got to give props to students today. Just real quickly, Castle Trading, first $1,000 win. This is always a great, great day. You know, whenever you hit a milestone and you start seeing the world in a new light. I remember the first time I made 100,000 in a day when I was a freshman in college. That was kind of crazy, and it helps you understand the beauty of stock trading and what's possible. So whether you make your first 100, your first 1,000, your first 10,000, your first 100,000, even if it's a first million, whatever it is, milestones really help you understand, and they should be celebrated. So congrats, Castles Trading. Here's KK, made a nice trade on MGT. Lucas made 720 on MGT. Dan the Man, this was a nice patient play on TWLO, which was one of the hottest IPOs, a little higher price than I like, but he made $10 a share, so you can't complain about that. Here's Vincent. This is the trade that I basically did, CRCM. Vincent actually exited a little nicer, a little higher than I did, but he made a few $100s in a few minutes. Here is Michael. He also made 900 bucks today. Sniper Trades made a quick 400. I already talked about Vincent. Lauren, I love this. She had some patience. She missed the spike on GBR the other day, so she shorted a little bit. And this is what you can do with all of these stocks. If you ever miss a spike on a speculative stock, I'm not just saying short anything, but on like a speculative stock like GBR, you can flip it around and you can try and profit on the way down. And this is a very nice screenshot of her having patience, just holding 2 days, shorting at 305 and covering at 208, making 30%. Just a few $100, but that adds up over time. And then also Matt, just first ever trade, buying the pump WRIT, 113 to 130. And I told him, very nice, but trading pumps is very risky. So you got to be careful, Matt. But congrats. Let me start off. I guess I'll start off with WRIT. Let's talk about pumps. These are blatant pumps that are being promoted right now. The charts look manipulated. They look impossible because they are manipulated. They are impossible. No good company ever goes from 40 cents to $1.40 in 4 days. But don't worry about good versus bad companies. Focus on the price action. I know there's a whole little group of short sellers, and they're cynical, and they all look like Yoda, and they live in huts, and they think that you should never buy pumps and you should never buy crappy companies. And that's just stupid. I made my first million buying the worst companies you've ever heard of. Pumps work, especially right now in this market as we're learning. And if you can time it right, you can bank. WRIT is the hottest pump right now. Good job, promoters. VMRI. This was the hottest pump last week. And guess what? I bought this out of $1.70 before it went to 340 the same day. Or was it the next day? No, I guess it was the next day, yeah. So 24-hour period, you could have doubled your money. Did I capture the 100% win? No, because when I trade pumps, I am scared as fuck, okay? I got out with 1/10 of the potential profits of what I could have, should have made. But at the same time, I still had profits, and there was actually a lot more money to be made on the downside. So I don't mind being cautious. And congrats to my top student, Tim Grittani, for making roughly $30,000 in 2 days on the long and short. I think he actually might even be up a little more now. But Awesome, awesome example. This is straight out of my penny stocking framework DVD. So if you want less choppy plays, I mean, talking about MGT right now, this is a choppy, choppy play. I don't know what it's going to do. You have a morning spike, a morning panic, a little rebound, a little consolidation, a little spike, a little consolidation, another spike, probable double top, now more consolidation. I mean, it's like every pattern in the world all condensed into 2 hours of trading. I don't like it. I don't trust MGT. If we're talking about pumps, WRIT is the biggest pump right now. VMRI was a big pump. And MGT, I would have to place, third place on the bronze medal for the biggest pumps right now. Even though it's not your typical pump, even though, you have a successful businessman, John McAfee, behind it, I mean, they're putting out more press releases than I have ever seen any company ever do. That's not a pump. I've seen a lot of press releases from pumps. And you have to ask, why are they putting out so many press releases? Is there really so much stuff going on with the company? The answer is no. There's a lot of stuff going on with every company. But this company specifically seems very interested in getting their stock price up, getting every single thing that they do noticed. If John McAfee takes a dump, they'll put out a press release saying it was a successful #2 launch today. That's how insane this press release machine is. And MGT says that they're going into Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and all this security. I think that they should change business models and go into the PR business because they are fantastic at PR. Who else could put out a press release about John McAfee taking a dump and it being successful? I'm kidding about the dump, but I wouldn't be surprised if they put out similar, ridiculous type press releases. And they have been pretty much every single day. So I don't trust it. I just don't. I've missed out on these run-ups lately. I was dip buying this in the 250s and 240s, and I was taking a lot of heat because I was technically buying a pump. But I like buying pumps when they're down 50% and they look like they have a solid base. There's absolutely nothing wrong with buying this in the 240s or 250s. Don't listen to those little introverted, non-transparent Yoda short sellers of the world where they never buy anything. And guess what? That's why they're poor as fuck and weird as fuck. And I have to swear I'm sorry because I'm really pissed off due to all the narrow-mindedness going around where you should never buy penny stocks. You should never buy on dips. Screw that, okay? You should never buy bad companies. Trade the price action, whatever you can do. If you're dip buying MGT like I was here in the 240s and 250s several times, even though, I was a little too early, I didn't hold for the 3s and now the 4s, it shows that I'm on the right track. And guess what? If I'm wrong, it's not the end of the world. You cut losses quickly if support fails. So it is a solid risk-reward scenario. That's all you can do in trading is take solid risk-reward scenarios again and again and again. And sometimes you're going to be wrong. Let me talk about my trade this morning on CMCM. Not CMCM, CRCM. Sorry, too many tickers. This is care.com, kind of like an Uber for babysitters, kind of a cool business model. And Google just invested their first investment in a public company. And you got to believe that they're probably going to eventually, take them over. But this stock is up huge. I mean, it's up 40%. This is not a small company. But when the news was announced yesterday, it went pretty much to the 9s and then the 10s. And late when you really could have gotten a position, it was already up to 12. And then pre-market today was up to 12, 12.20, 12.30 even. I did not want to chase it because when you have this kind of a gap, I don't care if Google's investing. I don't care if John McAfee is investing. I don't care if Jesus is investing. I don't know how it's going to react when the real volume comes in. And so the only play for this is to dip buy it on a big dip. And that's exactly what we happened. We got a nice little morning spike right at the market open. It opened at around 1160, 1170 and immediately spiked to 12 and then ran into a wall. And that wall is held all day. This is like the ice wall in Game of Thrones where the White Walkers are not going to, pass through this wall. And unless, Bran screws it up like he already did once. But you want to dip buy into panic. This was the exact same pattern the other day on, what was it, OPTT, where I'm dip buying. I've done this a few times. I did this on, what was it, JVA a few weeks ago. When you have a stock that's up huge, you don't necessarily want to chase it right at the open. But if a big dip opens up, that increases your risk reward. And I actually nailed this with my dip buy here in the 1120s. You know, I could still be holding right now. But when you dip buy like this and then you get a spike back up to the 1180s, 1190s, I got a little lucky on this one. You know, part of the reason why it spiked so quickly is you see this big volume spike. It was mentioned on Fox Business, and they talked about the Google deal. So for me, I can't control when TV or any media report is going to come out. I think this was like 10 or 15 minutes after I bought, which was kind of cool. But if you're buying good news companies, you're probably going to have follow-up good news. And it's just as the story spreads, because frankly, with these kinds of companies, you know, even though this is an $11 stock, not quite a penny stock, it's still part of the small cap regime where mainstream financial media does not cover it every single second. So you get follow-up media coverage. You know, you had one media coverage here, and then we had another media coverage here. And so if you can dip buy and not chase, and not like, you know, I would never buy this stock right now at 1190 or even 1180 because there's a solid wall at 12. Maybe if it can break this, you know, wall, then maybe I might buy. But that's probably not going to be until season 8, okay, if you go with my Game of Thrones analogy. And then the dragons will probably crush them anyway. So you have to be very careful with these walls. And the wall was at 12, and now the wall is at 1190. The only opportunity to make money is to dip buy this. And even though this is choppy, you know, even though this looks kind of crazy, it's a lot easier than a stock like MGT, which is making new highs, then new lows, then another new high, and now it's, you know, mid-range. CRCM, you have really positive news with Google investing, you know, I think it was close to like $50 million. I mean, this is not a small investment in this company. And MGT is just press release, press release, press release. John McAfee taking a number 1, John McAfee taking a number 2. And that's how, you know, MGT goes up. I would much rather buy a stock like this with a solid catalyst. And that's why I didn't touch HNR. You know, this was too quick of a spike. And I won't touch it, but congrats to those of you who nailed it. VBLT is another morning spiker, and that's coming down a little bit. AKER had some positive news. This was a morning spiker that didn't really last that long. GBSM had some news, and this couldn't even spike at all. I mean, this one has had so many spikes. This spiked big last night after hours, but today it's just done absolutely nothing. So be careful with all of these spikes. Yesterday, I should mention, I bought TWER on the dip here in the 16s. Okay, it already had a big spike. I'm sorry I didn't get to do a video lesson yesterday. Yesterday was a crazy day for me. I gave a challenge webinar, so I answered a lot of questions. But for those of you asking, you know, why did I buy TWER? This is also a pump, but it has a history of spiking big. Now, most importantly, this guy Barry Honig, who's a professional pumper, owns 10%, and you got to think that, you know, if a professional pumper gets involved, what's he going to do? He's going to pump. So you're just waiting for the setup. And yesterday it turned out to be record volume. So again, I did not want to chase it yesterday. Very similar to CRCM, where, you know, the news wasn't that it had any good news. The catalyst was the fact that it had such a huge morning spike on such huge volume. So I wanted to dip buy. And that's exactly what I did here. And we got a nice uptrend. We got a nice breakout of the day high. But the reason why I was selling here in the 19s, and I gave this one, you know, hours. Some of you guys are not used to that, where you're like, oh, you're in and out in 15 minutes or an hour or 30 minutes. I'm in as long as I feel comfortable with the price action. With TWER, I gave a huge amount of time, not because it's a good company, not because I was so sure of it, but because the price action was good. And I thought that it could retest the morning high of 19. And my whole goal when I was buying it in the 16s and 17s was that I thought that it could get to the 20s. And if you remember, I mean, this was one of my biggest winners in June. You know, I was buying this at 20 cents. I sold at 25 and 28. It went up to 32, and after hours it was at like 34. So this has a history of really spiking if it can get going and if the volume can get up. And we saw that yesterday and today also. But the reason why I sold, I gave it one chance to break out. I did not sell into this breakout. I don't want to sell into a stock that's making a new high. I know there's some people out there that are like scalpers and they sell into strength and they buy on dips. If a stock makes a new high, that gives me more reason to hold it because now it's a breakout. And I thought that it could actually get to the 20s. And if it get to the 20s, you know, it could go supernova again. As it turned out, though, it came right back down and then tried again. And now we have, look at this, the Twin Towers. I make a lot of analogies, deal with it. 19 and a half. Okay, so when you have a double top here like this, and yes, technically it is a breakout over the morning high, but I don't like double tops, okay, and I don't like stocks that can barely break out. It's really unfortunate that the breakout was only half a penny a share, but I don't get to choose. I mean, this thing is trading 40 million shares. Barry Honig, for all I know, is selling into this. I don't know what's going on. I'm only buying this because of the huge volume, because there's a professional pumper attached, and he's probably planning some pump in the near future. And when you're planning a pump, as these promoters like to do, they like to get the stock up in advance so that, you know, the pump can be at even higher prices. But when there's a double top, I'm sorry, I'm out, and I don't give it another chance. And as it turned out, you know, it closed in the 17s. Today, yet again, I didn't even trade it today. And yet again, what did it do? It finished right here at 19 and a half. So 19 and a half is now clear resistance. So I will not be buying until it breaks out and until that breakout is convincing. I'm working on this new DVD called Trader Checklist. It's really going to help explain all of this stuff much better. I know that some of you guys who think that you can like learn everything for free and you don't learn the subtleties of the market, you're like, well, technically this is a breakout. I read breakouts you want to buy. Why is this going down? Well, because penny stocks and breakouts, it's not an exact science. You need a convincing breakout, and you don't need a double top, and you don't need a triple top. And as you see, these were, it was a very good trade on my part. Buying it in the 16s and 17s a few times and selling in the 19s. I took the meat of the move, and more importantly, I really gave it time, and I wanted to see how far it could go. I forced the stock to show me how to trade it. I reacted to the price action, and that's how you should always be. Not that this is a good company or this is a bad company. Don't listen to those Yoda introverts, who don't even show their real name. Do you know how many people there are out there who pretend to be experts and they can't even show their real name? If you're an expert, show your real name. Show your face. Don't be a Yoda introvert. Also, BSPM was my play yesterday. And again, I got a lot of hate from the Yoda clans about this. And it's kind of funny because this one, has been spiking. It's come down. It's a very sketchy stock, and short sellers are obsessed with it. They think that this thing is just worthless. And for me, I'm not trying to value the company. I'm more interested in reacting to price action. You got a big morning spike, a second morning spike, a third morning spike, and yesterday was its fourth morning spike in a row. And yesterday, unlike the previous 3 days, it didn't just morning spike and then fade. Morning spike, fade, morning spike, fade, morning spike, fade. Yesterday, it had morning spike, consolidate, new high, consolidate, and then it kind of like triple topped. And so I was, I made a mistake yesterday. I bought this here at around 5-ish, thinking that it was going to kind of like invert the pattern, and it could break out past 5 and then morning spike today to maybe like 550. And I thought that because everyone was anticipating the morning spike, you could buy it a little early. And I think I was buying it at 2:30, 3 p.m. Eastern. Normally, I like to buy at 3:30 Eastern, because then it lessens your risk because you kind of, know where the stock is going to close. You're buying near the market close in specific anticipation of a morning spike the next day. But I thought people would anticipate the morning spike, and that way I thought that it might have a good chance at an afternoon run up. And I was just wrong. And I cut losses quickly. But yesterday, and we actually did get a little morning spike today, but the resistance at 5-ish hurt again. So the key on this one is, okay, it has morning spikes, but 490-ish, big time resistance. So you don't want to be buying there. And also, the longer, the Yoda creatures are right about this. The longer it fails to break 5, this actually probably will come back down to the 3s. So it's tough to try to guess, is it going to break out? Is it not? As long as it doesn't break 5, shorts are in control. But in control for what? I mean, I had a 3% loss, and all the little Yoda creatures are like, "Oh, you had a terrible loss." Well, listen, little Yoda wannabes, okay? And I shouldn't even say Yoda. Yoda is wise. These little creatures who don't share their real name, real pictures, or anything, they're just all over the interwebs. They're the ones who are not understanding risk reward. I lost 3%. Boo-hoo! Boo-hoo! 3% is fine, okay? TWER, I made nearly 20%. So if you can make 20% on a trade and be, for the most part, right for several, hours, pretty much the whole day, wrong about how far it could go, but pretty much right with the trend, and then lose 3% on a speculative trade, and I guess I could have held, BSPM overnight. What did it hit today? It hit 508, 509. I guess if I had waited for the morning spike, I actually could have gotten out with a small profit today, but I didn't like the way that it closed yesterday. But I would do both these trades again. If you can make 20% or even 10%, I think I did a few trades on TWER. My biggest one was 10%. I didn't capture the entire move. But if you can make 10% and lose 3%, guess what? I'm not that good at math, but your gains are bigger than your losses. That's how you build wealth over time. Over and over and over again, even if you're wrong. And BSPM, I was wrong yesterday, and I cut losses quickly. And even though, it did actually morning spike, so I was kind of on the right track, I was wrong for the time period when I held it. TWER, I was right for the time period I held it. So I'm not always going to be right on stocks. I'll probably be on the right track. CRCM, I was dead on right. I couldn't have been any more right. I alerted it perfectly. I traded it perfectly. I probably could have sold a little better, in the 1170s, 1180s rather than 1160s, but it's okay. Okay. If you're on the right track and if you're right more often than you're wrong, your profits will add up, and you don't have to be afraid of being wrong. You don't have to listen to the little wannabe Yoda creatures saying, "Oh, you were wrong about this." We can all be wrong. But if you cut losses quickly, it's not the end of the world. And in fact, it's part of trading, and you have to accept that. The problem is a lot of people don't cut losses quickly. That's where trouble comes in. BSPM is back down to the 460s as I'm making this. I was in the 490s. So even now I'd be down, 5%. But some stocks don't move this slowly. Some stocks, if you don't cut your losses at 2 or 3%, you can be down 10 or 20% the next day. So I don't want to risk it. If a stock does not do exactly what I want, I get out. It doesn't matter if I lost 5 cents or 10 cents or 20 cents. I just want to try and, stop the bleeding as best that I can. And I don't worry about what the stock does the next day. Am I happy that BSPM did another morning spike today? So in effect, I was kind of on the right track. Of course I'm happy. That validates my entire trade. But at the same time, I was wrong for when I was holding the stock. So I rightfully accept my small losses. My small losses on BSPM are overwhelmed by my gains on CRCM and TWER. And just analyzing these, this small little subset of data, these 3 trades, that's how you become a profitable trader. You go in with a thesis, you trade good risk reward plays. And if you're wrong, you cut losses quickly. And ideally, if you're right, your gains are bigger than your losses. That's it, guys. Anyways, thank you again for tuning in. And I really cannot tell you enough to go to traderandinvestorsummit.com right now before the early bird pricing tickets are gone. Trust me, they will be gone. We're selling them like hotcakes, and we have a limited space this year. So get them now, traderandinvestorsummit.com. I'll see you guys in the chat room. And it's my 3-year anniversary this weekend, so I'll be a little MIA with questions, but we have enough videos and DVDs and webinars, especially you challenge students, to study on this long holiday weekend. So don't waste it. Thank you.